Folks, I'm not gonna lie to you. These hands are raw and dirty, and I'm pissed off, and F this kit. So I knew these two springs, when you get into the fire control unit and you have to take this out, and these two springs are all the way back here, and you have to strip the whole fire control unit down. I knew that would be daunting, but you know, these dudes who make the videos, they've done this so many times that the littlest things you take for granted in terms of trying to do things, because they don't really point out any problems you're going to have other than, hey, watch out for this little spring that might be here. So I've had this M-Carbo spring on here probably 5 times. And what they really didn't go into in depth on this particular component that slides right in here, that's your actual firing pin component. I'm going to call that firing spring unit. You know, if you accidentally take this out, gee, which orientation does this go if you weren't paying attention? Does it go in this way? Does it go in that way? So since they didn't take it out, they don't mention it, but trial and error told me it goes in not this way, but this way to seat against there when you look at the wear of the, so you'll see that seat. There we go. And again, since I can't take this apart or put it together on screen or on video for YouTube rules, taking this spring off and popping this collet, piece of cake, but if you do it enough, you can see how raw my fingers are. But what had happened was there's a little, so the way this should operate is, you know, it goes all the way back for firing and striking and firing, striking and firing. But what had happened was, you know, in putting this on the mat, this little thing got dislodged, this little arm, and trying to figure out how that goes back in, that was a half hour or so in terms of getting it positioned right, because, again, without knowing how this functioned beforehand or having to figure out how it does function, thinking it was as simple as just compress this, replace the spring, put it back in, yeah, it didn't work. So for me, that was a pain in the behind. So getting this all back together and putting this arm in the right place so that you could have your compression strike. So when I put this new spring in, which different color, I was expecting some difference, you know, something, and you can't have this cocked to put it back in. I was expecting something, some difference. Zero, absolutely zero. Like if anything, the trigger pull sounded lighter, felt heavier, if that even makes sense, if that's even possible. So yeah, this was a no-go for me, to the point where, hey, $20, I'm not even gonna fuck with these. Holy shit, I know my limits, and I was, again, not trying to talk and do this is probably not going to work. Do I have that correct? Yes, I do. Yeah, I don't know enough about striker fire, taking them apart, getting them back together again. Fuck. It's a pain in the ass. It really is. All right, I'll be back in a second. So that was a perfect example of something that should have been as simple as punching this in, as all the directions say, and then sliding that plate on. Yeah, no, it didn't happen. And what I noticed, and what really bothered the fuck out of me, is, again, after you have everything back together again, and you know what? I honestly can't remember if this particular frame is, so this is just reassembling as opposed to doing any type of manufacturing. I can't remember if this was a, see, deadness, which kind of freaked me out. And the reason I say this is because, and then the magazine wouldn't go in all the way. So I'm like, what the fuck is going on? But then when I do this, now I have functionality, and I have functionality. So yeah, I'm not real impressed, and maybe that's because of my own dumbassity. So $20 kit, I'll chalk that up to I'm in over my head with this bitch. Now I hope this still works. But yeah, when my last pull was 6 1/4 with this spring. So, you know, maybe this is a higher tension spring and this is what actually does the magic. But yeah, I just didn't like, back to 6, just didn't like how this was progressing today. And I don't even have any medicine. Yeah, I'm going to have to go back and look at my previous pulls because, yeah, maybe I fucked my gun up. That's coming in at 7. God, it just doesn't feel like it. Yeah, 6 1/2. Yeah, fuck this. I'm fucking done. Oh, it's been a day, YouTubers. Good evening. Reloading Bench back with you once again. And we will cover the finality of the M-Carbo P320 trigger spring kit. So as I had said in previous videos, there's 3 springs. One for the firing pin, the striker housing. I'm sure there's probably a fancier name for that. And then 2 sear springs. 2 sear springs. And, you know, when I watched the video that M-Carbo makes, very thorough, but it's also by somebody who knows exactly what they're doing. Doesn't go fast, but moves through it, and it's like 28 minutes, 30 minutes, I think. So I started earlier today trying to do this firing pin striker pin group replacement, and when I put it back in, things weren't working, and I was learning, and obviously I missed some steps or didn't do some stuff right because I'd never taken this 320 apart like that. So long story short, I took it back down to its original and got it working again. I'm like, I'm done with this. I'm not going to deal with it. Then I stepped away, and as I was away, I was watching some other YouTube videos by a guy named the SIG Guy. And he had another company, same kind of kit, similar springs and whatnot. But his instructional video was more in line with my level of understanding. And he also pointed out that you don't have to take the fire control unit apart the way these guys do on their promotion for this kit. So they take the entire fire control unit apart. And that was what was daunting because there's just a lot going on there. And come to learn, you don't have to do that. So I have since upgraded the springs. These are the original springs. And we'll take it out here in a second for the trigger pull. And I wanted to make sure that I have enough, again, after today's on and off again, fails and whatever. So I wanted to make sure I have a good primer strike. So I took old primers. You can see that is essentially just an empty silver cup now. Hammered out the primer strike so that it's just a little tiny flat circle. I did that for 2 primers. This one's a little more raggedy around the edges. Same kind of thing, flattened out the primer. So what I'm going to do is I am going to seat that off camera because I don't think I'm allowed to show that per YouTube's rules, because that might be considered some form of manufacturing. Now, because I've mauled these primers to death, that one doesn't even want to go in the cup. There we go. So now we have a, Phaco, no powder. Let's see if I can, this one is a little mashed up. A little mashed up. Yeah, methinks that's not going to go into the primer arm. Murphy's Law. I don't think that's going to seat. This will probably be stuff I edit out. Wow, that is one farged up primer. Fake primer. I'm trying to flatten it into the cup. All right, good enough. So this is mashed in there. So I now have my 2 fake primers. Obviously that one looks good, this one looks shitty. The whole point is I just want to see what the primer strike looks like. I will put a head on these just for completeness sake, so that you can see how that little crimp too. 1 fake bullet. It's fake bullet night. All right. So we have our 2 fakey fakes with undone primer strikes. I'll put this stuff away and I'll go grab the SIG. All right, we are going to test 2 things. 1, to see what kind of primer strike we get. I, again, don't know how well this is focusing. Sometimes it does well, sometimes it doesn't. And we will, again, unloaded. It fires. So, let us check for primer strike with our fakey, I would call that a primer strike. And I would call that, that one didn't look so good. But it's also because I pounded the shizzle out of it. So we're going to go with that one, because this one was pounded like you cannot believe. This one was not. And we've got a nice dimple there, so I am not worried about a firing pin issue, as in light strike. Now let's see what we've got. So if you remember right, I think we were at 5 in high change, 6 in low change. We are now just at 5 on that one. So that didn't do shit. We are at 4.5 on that one. We are at 4 and just under 5, 4 3/4. We are at 4 3/4. So 4 3/4. That one was heavy. That felt heavy as all could be. And that one felt heavy too at 5.5. Would I do this again? No. Wasn't worth, nah. So now I'm pulling 5.5s. Was not worth it. Both in time, frustration, yeah. Fuck it. Time and frustration. So, yeah, I don't think it was worth it. The amount of time it took, the amount of videos to watch, the frustration. Does it feel better? We'll see at the range. Who knows? But 20 bucks for the springs, reasonable. The video, too complicated. SIG Guy had a much simplified version for changing out the sear springs, where you don't have to take the entire FCU apart. And yeah, I'm going to say not worth it. In the big picture, just not worth it. Last one. And that came in at 4.5. So, again, who knows? I don't know if it's more psychological than anything. But we'll take it to the range, see how it performs. Hopefully it still shoots. Obviously these will not get thrown away, and we'll go from there. Take care, folks.